Hello, I'm Diane Rosenberg, Executive Director of Jefferson County Farmers and Neighbors JFAN here in Southeast Iowa. And I'm here today with Robert Martin, Senior Advisor at the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future, and Adam Shriver, the Director of Wellness and Nutrition Policy at the Harkin Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement. And I want to welcome you both here today. We're here to talk briefly about a very consequential meeting. It's a joint venture with the Harkin Institute and Johns Hopkins, and it addresses the issues that so many of us in Iowa are talking about these days, especially in the light of Iowa's high cancer rates, and that's the connection between CAFOs and public health. The conference, Industrial Farm Animal Production, the Environment, and Public Health, is going to be held September 25th and 26th at Drake University in Des Moines. It's also going to be live streamed on YouTube, and it features an all-star array of top public health experts and other leading experts in the field of agriculture, health, and the environment. And these people are working on this issue here in Iowa and across the country. What's really unique about a conference of this caliber is that it's launching an impressive and timely new book published by Johns Hopkins University Press, also called Industrial Farm Animal Production, the Environment, and Public Health. And it's edited by Bob Martin and Dr. Jim Merchant. So Bob and Adam, I know you've been working hard on this conference and you're excited about this meeting. And I think this new book is a good place to start our conversation today. So Robert, you're the editor of the book, one of the editors. Tell me what it's about, what was its inspiration, and what it took to put it together.
Thank you, Diane, for having us on today. Really appreciate it. It's good to speak with you again. The book really started when Dr. Jim Merchant, the former dean of the School of Public Health at the University of Iowa, reached out to me and said he had asked the former dean at the University of Iowa Law School, William Hines, to draft a policy statement or a policy review on the legal aspects of concentrated animal feeding operations, the laws that would govern them. And what Mr. Hines provided was Jim thought too long for a policy review piece just for Iowa, but that it would make a really good book chapter. And so he reached out to me because Jim and I were both on the Pew Commission on Industrial Farm Animal Production that released its report in 2008 that covered many of the same issues of the book, but we did not look at the legal aspects of CAFO regulation. So Jim and I worked together to put together 12 chapters trying to cover the environmental aspects, public health aspects, and really some of the advocacy approaches to regulating CAFOs. And that's really how the book was developed. And we started, when I got into this, I didn't know it was going to take so long. We started in December of 2019 with the first conversation Jim and I had. The Center for a Livable Future was very supportive because that's where the Pew Commission had been housed, and that CLF works on all the issues really covered by this book. So the COVID disrupted our process quite a bit, but we have 12 chapters, several co-authors of the leading experts on environment and public health, whether it's water quality, water pollution, air pollution, antibiotic resistance, antibiotic use issues in these operations, and it all presents a very serious threat to the public health of communities, and that's what the Pew Commission found as well, that it was an unacceptable level of damage to the environment, an unacceptable level of threat to the public health of communities, and it actually damaged the economies of the small communities where they're located, and were really unacceptable animal welfare conditions. So this is kind of a follow-up to the Pew Commission, but it's more expanded than the Pew Commission because we did not look at the legal aspects. So I I'm really looking forward to this conference with the Harkin Institute and Adam. Jim has worked with the Harkin Institute before. This is my first time, so we're really hopeful that the conference and the book will address many of the concerns of concentrated animal feeding operations.
So yeah, let's move on to the conference, because it's usually you don't have a whole conference that's launching a book. So this is a significant book and this is a significant conference. So what gave you the inspiration to do this, launch this book, in the conference? But what was the seed that made that all come about?
Well, I think it was Jim, having worked with the Harkin Institute. Senator Tom Harkin was a leader in public health and human health issues. Iowa is kind of one of the two ground zeros for the public health and environmental damage of these operations. The other one is North Carolina. And I think, Adam should really speak to why this topic resonated with the Harkin Center. But from my viewpoint, Senator Tom Harkin was a leader in public health. When he was a member of the Senate, he's continued to advocate for, family agriculture, which has, I think, better public health and environmental outcomes than industrial agriculture. And the Harkin Institute's become really well known for its series on wellness. But Adam would probably better speak to what interested the Harkin Institute.
Yeah, that sounds right to me, Bob. So Senator Harkin was asked to write a foreword for the book. And I think as part of that process, he got really enthusiastic about the book and was very excited about it coming out. And I think offered the Harkin Institute to do anything that we could to help promote it because we recognized its importance. And so I think the conference idea was somewhat born out of that. But then also, just for me personally, as the Director of Wellness and Nutrition, this is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. And so when I saw that opportunity, I jumped at it because I recognized just how important it is. I'm someone who grew up in Iowa, but I've traveled around to a lot of different academic centers, land and food systems department at University of British Columbia, the Oxford Martin School at Oxford University, and studied food systems there. And one thing that just struck me is how Iowa is really on the front lines of so many of these huge issues about how the food system affects the environment and how public health is impacted by the ways that we grow food. So I think it's really Des Moines, Iowa is really a perfect place to have this conference because so many of these issues are happening right here in the Midwest, and it's such a hub of a lot of the activity and a central place where the impacts can be seen pretty directly.
And as someone that works in this whole area with CAFOs and communities, I see the impacts. So it's a very appropriate place, in my opinion, to do this. So let's talk about the audience for this conference. Who are you targeting that you feel is important to understand this relationship between agriculture and public health?
So I could speak to that. I mean, I think one thing that's a little frustrating about this to me, and I don't know if you guys would agree, but I think it's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of scientific information out there on this topic, and yet it doesn't feel like it's really that widely known. It doesn't seem like the public has that great of an understanding of all the public health risks that are out there. It doesn't seem like necessarily all journalists or all farmers or even scientists who are working in different fields necessarily realize the impact of agriculture. So I think from my perspective, really the goal of this conference is to take this very specialized knowledge that is very scientifically credible and has lots and lots of supporting data, but to share it to a broader portion of the population, people who are educated and interested in having policy that's guided by the best scientific information, but who may not necessarily have known about this. So we've been doing a lot of outreach specifically to farmers organizations. So Iowa Farmers Union has been really helpful and supportive of this process. Practical Farmers of Iowa is going to have a speaker on our panel. We've also been reaching out to public health groups and organizations. A lot of environmental groups have been really supportive and helpful. So Food and Water Watch, for example, is one of their they're sort of the leader of their CAVO program is going to be speaking, and they're helping to promote the event. So yeah, so I think it's a big mix, but we're really looking for people who care about the environment, farmers, because they're of course going to be very relevant for any possible solutions that we can find. And then I think maybe other academics and other educated people who care about these issues, but maybe don't know all the specifics about the ways in which agriculture is impacting the things that they care about.
Would you say the conference would also be like the general public, maybe people that aren't quite as educated in these issues, but are concerned about what we're seeing here with Iowa's high cancer rates in that recent study? Would you say that they would be a good target for this meeting as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. The general public. I mean, I think, I guess I don't mean the term educated in any like like snooty sense of like I more just mean people who are sort of interested in paying attention to issues that are going on in the state and sort of care enough to want to make sure that we're following good policies and doing the best that we can. So I think I would say people who are following this issue of how the Iowa's high cancer rates, or who are worried about the high nitrate levels in the rivers and streams in Iowa. Anyone like that will find some great information at the conference.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the book was written with in mind that there are several audiences that Adam has really hit. Well, the lay audience, just people interested in the issues, regulators, advocacy groups, legislators, anybody that is concerned about this suite of issues will find the book accessible. And we've kind of structured the event in a similar fashion. There are a lot of people with technical expertise attending, but they're all people that can speak to a lay audience. So I think it is really for everyone. It's kind of interesting, as GHU Press has been promoting the book, and I've been reaching out to people to attend the conference. Yale, Columbia, and Hood College in Maryland have all expressed an interest in actually using the recording from this event in classwork in the spring. So it's really everybody should be interested in this conference, and it'll be presented in a way that's not exclusive for expertise, I think.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And I think you've all kind of answered this, but I'd like to underscore why this conference and this book is so important now. Because I've been working on the CAFO issue for like 17 years here in Iowa. And, we've all been aware of water quality over the years and health, and there's all these different studies that are out there. And, the Pew report certainly referred to quite a lot of them. But there seems to be like a now aspect of the importance of this meeting. And I wonder if you could just speak to that a little bit.
Well, from my viewpoint, I think this style of animal production, we're at a crisis point. We're at a crisis point from, as Adam and you both said, cancer-causing components to this style of production. The nitrogen and nitrates in the surface and groundwaters, we're now learning just how damaging that is to health. It's also quite damaging to the soil, but the over-application of nitrogen. The fact that a lot of these large-scale animal operations, for a while, were cutting back on their use of antibiotics that are used in an everyday fashion at low levels to keep the animals healthy enough to get through the system before they're slaughtered. Most companies that committed to reducing antibiotic use now backtrack on that. So antibiotic use is going up. Widespread infections or resistant infections are going up. There's just a story in the National Geographic today about a study showing that most urinary tract infections in the country in women are linked to antibiotic-resistant E. coli from chicken. So the scientific research is refining, and when the Pew Commission came out in 2008, we kind of were the alarm bell in the night on all these issues. The industry responded saying, "Oh, it's junk science." Well, the scientific evidence is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So we're kind of at an inflection point from a public health, a climate perspective, and soil and environmental degradation. And it's, like I said, really pronounced in Iowa and North Carolina, wherever these concentrations are heavy, Arkansas, South Carolina, Georgia. So it's kind of an inflection point, I think.
Yeah, I would just add too, I mean, I think everything Bob said is absolutely correct. And I mean, I feel like the way that we're doing animal agriculture now with the intensive confinement and the use of antibiotics it's rolling the dice. And if we keep rolling the dice enough times, eventually we're going to hit snake eyes. And so it seems like, and we learned that from COVID, that we're not the best society for dealing with these huge public health problems after they occur, and we're not the best at preparing for them beforehand. So it's something that we really need to take seriously. And then you've mentioned, Diane, that Iowa has the second highest cancer rates, but it's also a state where the cancer rates are growing. And so we don't even fully know the extent to which the problem is going to keep getting more and more serious if we don't do anything about it on that side of things. But then I guess on the positive side, it also seems to me that it does feel a little bit like maybe because of those issues, there's a little bit more of a sense in the public of being more open to talking about some of the problems with CAFOs, where at least, from my perspective, growing up in Iowa, I felt like a lot of stuff was just not talked about or, openly debated in a lot of types of environments. And it feels a little bit to me like maybe there's more hope, at least in some spaces, to have these conversations. So that's maybe a more hopeful reason for having the conference now.
Well, I think that cancer study opened up a lot of eyes, popped open a lot of eyes. So let's talk a little bit about the different topics that are going to be covered, because this is a very rich program that you've put together. Let's talk a little bit about the topics, and then I'd like you to go into some of the speakers that will be coming to this meeting, because it's really an all-star lineup of speakers that you've got.
Overall, the conference is going to have 10 panels and 2 different keynote speakers. And at the beginning of the conference, we're going to have an introduction from Senator Harkin, who, as I mentioned, is very enthusiastic about this issue. We're also going to have a welcome from the provost, Sue Madison. And it turns out she actually was a student of Jim Merchant. And so she also is really excited that this is going to be held at Drake University. So after that, we'll have a series of panels, and the first day really kind of dives into a few specific topic areas that are really relevant for Iowa. The first panel sets up the rest of the conference by talking about the history and context of industrial animal production. And so John Eichert, is a huge name, and so a couple other speakers who are very familiar with the rise of industrial animal production are going to talk about that. We are then going to have a panel that talks about the different ways in which industrial animal production affects air quality. And that will include both things like air pollution and particulate matter as it impacts the immediate surroundings, but also on a bigger scale, how it impacts climate change. Then we'll have a panel on water pollution, which of course is a huge issue in Iowa. And we will have quite a few people on that panel who are well-known speakers in Iowa. So Matt Liebman, David Osterberg, and Chris Jones, just to name a few of the people on the panel, are excellent communicators and can talk great about what's happening in Iowa. Then a panel on infectious disease and antibiotic resistance, which is a really huge issue right now. And as people have probably been hearing in the news, there have been a lot of outbreaks of avian influenza, and not just in chickens, but also instances of it being spread to cattle and instances of it being spread to humans. And fortunately, it hasn't yet been spread human to human, but if that happens, that would be big trouble. So this is a really important panel, and we actually have some people on the panel who are leading experts on that topic specifically. And then last panel of the first day will be on meatpacking workers, COVID-19, and child labor. So I think it'll do a nice job of connecting what happened during COVID, where we really saw how people's health was put in jeopardy. A lot of the workers' health was put in jeopardy to kind of keep the machine running, but also to connect some themes from that to the modern day issues, such as workers being endangered by things like avian influenza. And I'll let Bob talk about the second day.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So we'll kick off the second day with a keynote by Austin Frerick. He's the author of the new book, Barons, which really looks at the concentration in the industry in the frame of the robber barons from the 1890s that are probably more well known. And it's not just about animal agriculture, but other industry concentrations. And Austin has a tie to Iowa. He's been a fellow at the Harkin Institute before. The first panel will look at the social and community impacts and include environmental justice. Environmental justice isn't hugely equated with Iowa because of the homogeneity of the Iowa population, but it's a very serious issue in states like North Carolina, where these operations are located near communities that don't have political power. So there are a couple nationally known folks on that panel. Kendall Thu, who's an Iowan, retired from the University of Northern Iowa, and Loka Ashwood, who's written about these issues from the University of Kentucky. Then there'll be farm animal production and the law. One of the things that we feel is important is the legal structure and how these operations can be regulated. And Corbin Addison, the nationally known author of a book called Wasteland, will be on that panel. Jessica Culpepper from a group called Farm Stand that's led litigation nationwide on regulating these operations, as well as Charlie Tebbett and Brian Jurdy, who have litigated issues in Iowa and Missouri. There'll be a panel after that, after the lunch break. And by the way, there'll be coffee breaks with refreshments provided and lunch provided both days. So looking at the role that technology can maybe play in mitigating the damage of these operations. I tend to look at technology fixes as Band-Aids, but we felt it was important to at least address that aspect in this arena. Dr. Jim Merchant will be the moderator. He's former dean at University of Iowa School of Public Health, and then some folks from North Carolina State. And then Chris Jones, who is Iowa-based, and Adam mentioned will be on this panel as well. Then we're going to look at, okay, we've looked at all these problems. What does the future look like, or what can we move to that does not rely on CAFO production? So we're going to look at a sustainable and regenerative agriculture future. That will include John Eichert again. From an earlier panel. He's well known in the sustainability area. Kevin Fulton, a producer from Nebraska that practices rotational grazing and integrated crop and livestock systems, and Sally Worley and and probably Aaron Lehman from the Iowa Farmers Union. And then the final thing we'll do is really not necessarily a call to action, but what are the different methods of advocacy for reform? We've found that it's the courts, the public sector, whether it's getting restaurants to procure more sustainable foods, legislation or regulation, or the courts. So we'll look at all those aspects and include Tom Philpott, who was at Mother Jones and before that at Grist. He's now at the Center for a Livable Future. Jessica Culpepper, again, because that's the legal avenue. Liza Gonzalez, Sarah Sortra, and Chrissy Kasser-Monroe from advocacy groups. So we're trying to say, okay, here's all this information. Here are some avenues for reform that you can pursue. And then we're done.
Sounds like such a great meeting. And I know there are other speakers also that are lined up that are equally impressive. And what I'll suggest doing is going to the website that gives the description, and you'll get the whole list of speakers there, and you will be impressed. So here's the all-important question. How can people register? Maybe you could talk about the cost and the options, what it comes with and all of that.
Yeah, great question. So probably the easiest way is to go to the conference website directly, which unfortunately is a little bit of a mouthful. So it's sites.google.com/view/AAEPH conference. And then that will take you to the conference webpage. And once you're on that page, there'll be a number of links that will take you to the registration page, which is an Eventbrite page that you can register for. The in-person registration is $100 for those, for folks who are in Iowa, and there's also online options. However, we do have quite a lot of discounts available for people who are members of various groups. And so anyone who knows Diane will likely have an opportunity to get a discount code that will make the conference more affordable if 100 sounds like a lot to you. So you are welcome to use those discount codes.
Yeah.
All registrants, by the way, will get a copy of the book as part of their registration. So I think the cover price is $45 or something like that. So for the registration fee, you'll get a copy of the book. Online participants, the people that do the streaming, will get a copy of the book as well. So you'll have and Adam is Harkin Institute is going to record this conference, so it'll be available. One of the things is trying to make it as openly accessible as possible once we get the cost of the conference considered. It's we're hoping a lot of people will be able to attend in person or online. I did think of one extra thing too about talked about why now earlier. Not only is this research about urinary tract infections being more refined, so now avian influenza is jumping from dairy cattle to people. Avian influenza doesn't originate in cows. It's the international reservoirs wild waterfowl. And so that, and historically has not jumped to people. So it has made its way from waterfowl probably to the domestic poultry flock, whether it's the broiler flock or the layer flock. And one of the sources they think, the way it's getting into cattle is, believe it or not, that poultry waste is fed to livestock in both dairy operations and feedlots, beef cattle feedlots. And it is jumping from infected dairy cattle who don't show any symptoms to people who do. So it's a unique pathway. We always kind of thought that it would, if avian influenza was going to jump to people, it would be probably to broiler or egg flocks, then to pigs, then to people, because pigs to people is the normal pathway. So this should be really alarming. This is one of those things that is solely happening because of the industrial nature of the system, and why poultry waste is being fed to dairy cattle is beyond me. That type of practice is banned in Europe, and it's fed to beef cattle in feedlots as well. So sorry for the digression, but that just came to me as we were talking about some of the threats.
No, I think that's an important one because it is, I know the USDA, CDC is concerned about what's going on there. I think they're downplaying it a little bit, but I think they're concerned and they don't want it to become anything bigger than what it is right now, and we just don't know what's going to happen. So it's a very relevant point. So to conclude, our discussion today, what do you hope bringing together people for this conference will accomplish? What do you want people to leave with, and what kind of actions do you hope this conference will inspire?
Well, I think Adam will want to speak to this too. From my viewpoint, it's really, we hope to give the audience, lay people, regulators, just interested parties, information to take forward to their state legislators and to the federal legislature to seek better regulation of these entities. CLF has a polling operation, and we've polled extensively on this issue in Iowa and North Carolina, and numbers in the high 80s for respondents think these operations are a concern. So the general public is worried. I think that the better evidence, scientific evidence, and really observational evidence that we can provide to the general populace, the better. And we hope that this will, support academics wanting to talk about this in coursework, that the lay public will take this to the Iowa legislature or their federal representatives in Congress to say, look, we've got to address these public health and environmental concerns, and we've got to do it now, because this is a serious problem that we're at a critical stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, being the host institution, I guess one of the things I hope for, and this is actually something I've talked with you about before, Diane, is just, I feel like oftentimes in the Midwest, we sort of see see these things as a negative, but I also feel like, maybe it can be reframed in a way as a positive, or at least as a recognition of the importance of where we are at and how we are actually on the front lines of this really important issue, and that we are in a place where it's a lot of important change needs to happen. And so I think being in Iowa and having an opportunity to connect with wonderful groups like JFAN and IRA and a lot of other groups that have been very supportive of this conference makes me really enthusiastic about groups in Iowa and surrounding states getting together and working together on issues like this. So I'm hopeful for that just overall, and of course hopeful that the Harkin Institute can keep being a part of this effort as well.
Well, I can speak as an organizer, both with JFAN and with the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Agriculture, that I think this is a perfect opportunity to really get a lot of good information, develop a lot of good messaging, important, valid messaging about the harms of CAFOs and why we need policies that are going to change things to make our public health come before, the financial interests of the industry. We need regulations that protect people. Right now, we've got regulations that protect the industry and people very marginally, and that needs to be flipped. So I as an organizer, I look at this as a really good opportunity to help jump, as a launching point for even greater organization. And I can tell you that I'm talking with some other organizers about meeting right after the meeting to see how we can, move forward with what is going to be presented, during this conference. So I'm very excited about it.
Diane, that's very well said. That's you stated. I think what I hope comes out of this, the result of this, very, very well. So I'm glad to hear that. That's a note of optimism. I'm not always real optimistic about about these issues. Sadly, I've seen kind of bipartisan failure on these issues, and so that's very encouraging.
Well, I look at this as a long-term solution. I talk about this a lot, where I feel like we're at the beginning stages, a foundational stage for change that will eventually come, just like the abolitionists were early in the days, the suffragettes early in the days, and it took a lot of work and bringing more and more people on. I look at the work that we're all doing as being part of that foundation that will change this industry, because ultimately this industry is not sustainable. There are too many weak spots in this industry, and we've seen a lot of them. We've talked about a lot of them today, and there's even more. So, that's, I think, where I keep my optimism, that we're part of this change that is inevitable, but we're laying a groundwork for it. So I want to thank you both for taking the time today to talk about this. Bob Martin, Adam Shriver. Again, the conference is Industrial Farm Animal Production, the Environment, and Public Health. It's going to be on September 25th and 26th at Drake University in Des Moines. It's also going to be live streamed on YouTube. If you attend the conference, you'll also get a copy of this new book. You'll have an opportunity to meet and network with people that are working on this important issue. And Adam, remind me, it comes with meals too, doesn't it?
Yeah, lunch both days will be provided.
Lunch both days. So, it's a good deal for knowledge, a book, and food, good food. And you'll have an opportunity, as I said, to meet and network with people that are working on this important issue, learn from others. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the registration link and the description, 2 different links in the description of the YouTube page where this will be posted. And you can also register by going to the Harkin Institute's website at harkininstitute.drake.edu. You'll have to dig a little bit in there. So what I'm going to do is make it easy for you and put the link in the YouTube description. So Bob, Adam, thank you so much for organizing this important meeting. Bob, thank you for working with Jim to, put together this book and to share all of this with us here today. And I wish you success in bringing about many people to this conference.
Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for all the wonderful work that you do.
Thank you.